And we got a little update here from the developers late on Friday, October 13th. Space update info from developers. Dear Stormworkers, yesterday was the launch of the Space DLC. The bad news, there were some issues. The good news that over the last 24 hours, we have released some hotfixes, and some major issues are now resolved. Many players have asked for details. Let us discuss. Sinking ships. Some of the new gravity mechanics had unintended interactions with some of the physics optimization for vehicles, which resulted in some vehicle parts weighing slightly more or less than they should. This was often an issue with larger vehicles and vehicles with many movable parts. While the change in weight was only small, this could cause ships to sit deeper in the water or tilt. The issue is now resolved. That can be confirmed. Check that out this morning. It's fixed. Jet turbines. With the new atmospheric mechanics, the air is thinner higher up, which means less air resistance, but also means that at some height, the air is too thin for jet turbine engines to be efficient. This is realistic. Good thing to have in the game now. This is intended, but was way out of balance with engines starting to lose efficiency only a few hundred feet up. The issue is also resolved. So this is an intended mechanic. It sounds like they just had some bad numbers in there. So it should have started at a higher altitude, and it was starting too low. Not a big deal. It's fixed now. Steam and modular engines. There are some issues with steam boilers and many modular engines. This is a reasonably big issue caused by some of the compressed gas changes. We are currently working on this and will deliver a fix ASAP. What a lot of people are reporting is what's happening now is say you have a tank of water. That tank holds 10 liters. It will have 10 liters of water, but it will also have a full tank's worth of gases. IRL, liquids are non-compressible. So once you put water in there, it displaces the gases, and there should be no gas in the tank. So that sounds like what's happening with some of the modular engine problems. Steam boilers, they are having a problem because you have air where there should be water. If there's air where there's water, you're not getting any cooling, and so therefore you cannot cool your steam boilers. Same thing with modular engines. The way modular engine cooling works is when the modular engine spawns in, the liquid in the cooling loop is spawned in as well. And if you have any air in there, you do not get stable flow rates and you cannot cool. So currently modular engines and steam boilers are broken. Likely, if I were to guess, the fix would be that they make it so that these things do not spawn any gas in them, and that will make it so that this works. So hopefully that's fixed soon. Of course, there are other things to look at, and we will get to them, but the above are the main ones, and that affect many players. Believe it or not, we actually did several months of full-time testing. Some of these issues were introduced more recently when addressing other minor issues, such as the sinking ship issue. We're too focused on testing the new features and specific changes and simply didn't expect the stuff to break. However, a lot of the problems are so wide-ranging that it would have been easy to discover them, and we should have. All right, so I think it's a pretty good statement here. I think they did do a lot of testing. I think they got overwhelmed, and the deadline was quickly approaching. And guess what? The deadline's here. We have to get the game out on time. And I think they missed a bunch of stuff that they should have caught. As you can see here, it says some of the issues were introduced more recently when addressing other minor issues. So I think we've all experienced this when we're building stuff in Stormworks. We fix something and it causes something else to break. This is a classic thing that goes on in software development. It sucks, but this often happens. Geometa are not the only company that has this happen. Trust me, Escape from Tarkov, Star Citizen, all these other games have this issue constantly where, these issues pop up. So of course, it should come out perfectly pristine in a utopian perfect world, but we don't live in a utopian perfect world. We live in a world with deadlines. We live in a world where people are fallible and they are not perfect, and issues arise. They say we're too focused on testing new features and specific changes and simply didn't expect that stuff to break. So I think we've all had this issue before where we've made a build in game that works, and then we go work on something new and we break the thing that was working, and we pull our hair out for a couple days. We don't know what it is, and then we figure it out and we fix it. And right here they say they should have discovered them. It's contrition for that, and I get that. Community reaction. The vast majority of the community has been very supportive. To those of you who have been patiently stood by for fixes or messaged us your support, thank you, and sorry for breaking your game. Again, they come in with an apology. I'm all for that. They've thanked the vast majority of the community. They've said most of us have behaved properly. All right. So I've seen a bunch of people responding to this already who are focusing on this part, the small minority. So the devs have said the vast majority of the community has been good. Most of the people, the vast majority of the people here are good. A very small number of people have unfortunately launched their own campaign, and within minutes of the new update launch were recruiting to their Discord, where they have organized and coordinated attacks. Doesn't surprise me. We have received Discord raids, review bombing, abuse, and death threats. To these players, we ask you to consider your actions. We understand your frustration, but we can't respond to aggression, demands, and threats. This is a really well-crafted statement. I've already seen people who are definitely seem like they must be part of this small minority if they have a problem with this statement. They've said a very small number of people have been launching attacks on them. They've done review bombing, Discord raids, abuse, and death threats. There's a pretty simple little rule you should follow on the internet. If you wouldn't do it in real life to somebody's face, you shouldn't be doing it on the internet. That's a pretty basic life lesson, is if you wouldn't say this to somebody in real life, you should not be saying it online. And this is a big problem that's been going on ever since the internet came out. Some of us were around before the internet was actually as ubiquitous as it was. And people will say things on the internet that they would never say to somebody to their face. There's that shield of anonymity there. And it would be a crime to abuse somebody, and it would be a crime to, definitely a crime for death threats. So, that is not cool, anybody doing that. That is, frankly, illegal. You can't do that even online. Death threats are a crime. You wanna go put a bad review, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But there are people recruiting for review bombing. That's pretty silly, I think. I think it's counterproductive. That is not going to help the game. That's not going to make the game better. So, I think this is a pretty reasonable statement here. To these players, we ask you to consider your actions. Yup. Look in the mirror is essentially what they're saying, and I agree with that. If you're out there, if you got your game taken away for a day, again, they fix most of the problems in 24 hours. If somebody took your game away for a day and you are abusing people and you're, giving out death threats, I think you need to look in the mirror. That sounds like a tantrum to me. If you saw a kid doing that in the grocery store, you'd say that kid's having a tantrum. And it is a very small number of people. Again, the dev said it's a small minority. It's a very small number of people, but it still needs to be addressed. And if you are offended by the statement, maybe you should look in the mirror. Maybe you are part of that small minority who is not behaving properly. Again, ask yourself this question. If I was in public, would I do this? And likely the answer would be no. And if you wouldn't do it in public, well, guess what? You're in public online. This is the public, and you're in public. You should not be acting this way, especially, death threats. This is not good for them. They're doing their job. This is a game. This is supposed to be our recreation time. This is supposed to be our fun, and this is a job for them. And nobody should be out there doing their job and receiving death threats. This is insanity, man. The person delivering your package, to your front door would not put up with you harassing them and giving them death threats if you're saying it to their face. And so you certainly shouldn't be doing this to somebody who's building your recreation time for you. And so I think some people, a very small minority, I highly agree with that. It's a small number of people, need to look in the mirror and, frankly, learn how to behave. The next steps. As usual, we will get on with resolving the remaining issues. We will work through these tasks one at a time. Expect to keep publishing improvements over the coming days. Further ahead, we should also look at how we change the way we work to ensure same issues don't repeat in the future. Much love, Stormworks developers. So now I kind of want to scold them a little bit. They need to come out and they need to be a little bit more honest with us. They need to be a little bit more candid with us. Candor means you come out with these things. You don't hold them back. You don't keep them secret. And so I think the developers could benefit from a little bit more communication, a little bit more candor. I think what they should have done, hindsight's 2020, of course, they should have come out a week, a month, whatever, a couple weeks before the DLC and say, listen, there are going to be some bugs with this update, but we have to get it out on October 12th. Now, one of my speculations is Steam is supposed to get 30% of the revenue from sales. That's the cost of doing business and being on Steam. Now, it would not surprise me, I have no information if this is true, but it would not surprise me if Steam makes you sign a contract that if your game does not come out on time, that you get a financial penalty. That would not surprise me. So, especially for a very small development team like this, that could be ruinous. That could destroy the company if they don't get their game out on time. That would not surprise me in the least. It would also not surprise me that a company like this may have to take out loans to finance these projects. Many companies have this. They have to take out a loan and they sign a contract that this new DLC is going to come out on October 12th, and starting, say, I don't know, maybe November 12th, we have to start paying on that loan. If we don't get the game out on time, we have to face a financial penalty. For example, Ark Survival Evolved is having that issue right now. If they don't get the game out by the end of this month, there are financial penalties they will have to pay the publisher. And so these are some things that we as a consumer may not think about. So I really wish that, so this is kind of the, to admonish GeoMeta, come out and be honest with us. Tell us, hey guys, because of X, Y, and Z, we have to have this game come out on October 12th. We have signed contracts that say this game has to come out on October 12th, and because the game has to come out on October 12th, we have no option but to release it in a less than ideal state. We apologize for this, but we have to release the game on October 12th. There are going to be things broken. We understand if you don't want to buy it on day one. Because the game is going to be a little bit buggy on day one, we recommend that people who are happy to test and are willing to fill out some bug reports, we would appreciate it if you would buy the DLC and if you would help us with these bug reports. If you do not want to do bug reports, if you do not want a buggy experience, we recommend that you do not buy it until we have worked out some of these bugs. That's what I think GeoMeta should have done. Now, there are a lot of options on Steam I wish GeoMeta would take. One, you can have you can opt in and opt out of betas. So, for example, if they know that the DLC is going to be buggy, if they know the DLC is going to cause a lot of problems, what they could have done, theoretically, they may not be able to do this, but this is what I think they should do, is they should have put it on a beta branch and said, again, come out and speak honestly to us. We're having problems with the game. We're going to need it a little bit tested by the community, so we're going to release the DLC to the beta branch, and if you buy the DLC, you have access to the beta branch, and you can test for it, and we would appreciate it if you guys would test and fill out some bug reports. What would have happened is the game would have come out October 12th. Those of us who are happy with testing would have gone on, bought the DLC, we would have tested it, and then we would have put our feedback on the bug tracker. Those who do not want to test and did not want to deal with bugs, they could have continued playing the game as it was. And then after a couple days, as we could see, with less than 24 hours, the major bugs were gone. Let's say, I would say in the next week, this game is probably, most of it's going to be fixed. I would say it's some of the minor issues, the major issue remaining being the Steam and modular engines. I would say within a week, those are going to be licked. Some of the minor issues are going to hang around as they try to squash those bugs, but they're minor, so they're really not super high priority. I think that would have been a better way to do it. I don't know. Again, they may have signed a contract that they can't do that it has to be a full release because Steam wants their money. Again, Steam gets 30% of every sale. And so that they might be in their contract. Maybe they can't talk about it. Maybe there's an NDA, they can't do that. But that's what I would recommend. We know that there are other games that do this. They put their new DLC out on a beta branch, on a test branch, and that is a good way for GeoMeta to cover their ass. That's a good way for those of us who are willing to play a buggy new experience to do that, and those of us who are not can skip it and stay with the game that we know is stable. I highly recommend GeoMeta does that. So when they say here further ahead, we're looking at how we change the way we work to ensure the same issues don't repeat in the future. I think what they need to do is they need to consider coming back with some sort of testing, community testing. There are, I believe them that they did months of testing. But my understanding is there's a very small company, 4 or 5 people, those numbers have been thrown out. I have no clue if that's accurate or not, but not a lot of people in this company. And so they're not going to be able to do all the tests. They're not going to anticipate how some of us play, how some of us bend the rules of the game by doing things like XMLing and some glitches. And so I think they need to start thinking about one, be much more candid with us. Come out and tell us when something's going to be broken. Hey, we're going to release the DLC. We have to release the DLC on the 12th, but it is currently pretty buggy. So if you don't want to deal with the bugs, we would ask you to please hold off and buy it in a couple weeks. We'll let you know when it is running smoothly. Those of you who will test, please come and test. We'd really appreciate that. That would be awesome. They could throw a couple things at us in the Discord roles. Hey, throw us a roll, tester, I don't know, throw us a piece of merch for testing for them, something. It shows that they're not devious. They're coming out front. It's best to get ahead of it. If you're going to be late to work, it's best to call and say, hey, I'm going to be 5 minutes late. And guess what? Most of the time, people don't care. But if you just show up 5 minutes late, they think you don't care. When you call ahead to work and you say, hey, man, I'm going to be 5 minutes late to work, it shows, oh, this person cares. Yep. And usually you get a no problem. If it happens all the time, of course, it's a mess. But it's best to be upfront and candid off the bat. And I think GeoMeta does a pretty bad job of that. I think they need to come up, be upfront with us, and be candid. So that's kind of my reaction to this. I was pretty disappointed with how a very small minority of the community reacted. I thought it was, people are saying this game will never get fixed, and in less than 24 hours, the main issues are fixed. I think in a week, this is going to be fixed. Do I wish this came out perfectly? Of course I do. But that is not reality. Every game that has ever come out has come out as a buggy mess, and it's something that's kind of innate with the video game industry. And GeoMeta is not the only one. Every other, I was making some examples today. Cyberpunk came out, and I think it was like 6 months before it was even quote unquote playable. And they just released a new DLC to Cyberpunk that people have been raving about, and they said this is what the game should have been. This game is great. Escape from Tarkov they came out with the inertia patch, and many players said this is the end of Tarkov. This sucks. This is terrible. And guess what? Everybody got used to it, and it works now. Ark Survival Evolved has been an absolute dumpster fire, and and then it gets better. And so I'm really hopeful that this will get better. I think there's a lot of things that GeoMeta needs to do better. I hope they do. I think that would be better for us and for them as well. I think these things will make them a better company, and it will make us less frustrated. And I certainly think that the people who are doing abuse and death threats, it's, I would say, a very small number of people. Those people really need to get a grip. You need to look yourself in the mirror. If because your game was taken away for 1 day and you issue a death threat, there is something very wrong with you. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.